But it comes out these two answers. X equals, it's called the quadratic formula. And now we're going to section 8.2. Minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. This is the shortcut, ladies and gentlemen, for completing the square. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to take this newfound friend, this formula, and we are going to do it. Let's take a problem. I'm going to go ahead and pick one that even has a number in front here, so some of you might panic and fear or whatever. I'm going to take one like this, 2x squared plus 7x equals 4. And I'm going to go ahead again. I have to get it in this form, no matter if I complete the square or use this quadratic formula. So I'm going to type next to this here. This is called the quadratic formula. And it is the shortcut for completing the square. All right, so bring the 4 over, subtract it from both sides, and you're going to get 2x squared plus 7x minus 4 equals 0. So once you get that, you now can see what I call the ABC numbers. ABC, as easy as do, re, mi, as easy as 1, 2, 3, A, B, C. So A is always the number in front of the x squared, in this case, 2. B is the number in front of x, 7. And C is the number after x, negative 4. All right, now you don't have to, have that first number to be a 1 when you use the formula. That's why it's so nice. You're just taking these values and you're going to plug them into that formula right up there. So let's do it and see what we get. X equals minus b would be minus 7 plus or minus the square root of b squared is 7 squared. Okay, now if you want to, we can just lock in every variable there. So I'm just plugging a 7 in for the b. Minus 4 times a is 2 times c is negative 4. All over 2 times a is 2 times 2. So it's a lot nicer than going through all of those steps we did in that last example, isn't it? Let's keep going. Minus 7 plus or minus. Now, a lot of people miss this number under the radical. They can't do the b squared minus 4ac part. This is just a killer of grades. All right? And by the way, this number has a special name. It is called, when you get that number, the discriminant. Now, notice the discriminant. It's not the square root. It's just the b squared minus 4ac number. So let's do that. Now, Aunt Sally would tell me to do the squaring first. So we would do the minus 7 or the 7 squared first to get 49 and then multiply next. So you would have minus 4 times 2 times minus 4 would be 8 times 4 I get is 32 all over 4. Let's keep going. Negative 7 plus or minus the square root of, I'll have to go over here on the side, 49 plus 32, that's a bad 3 there, is what, 11, I get 81 there. 81. So the discriminant number would be 81 if they were after that in this section, which they will be in 8.2. All right, so we're going to put the square root of 81 all over 4. Now look at this, a nice square root number. We know the square root of 81 is what? Yes, 9. So we would keep going here. Negative 7 plus or minus 9 over 4. Now, one thing to note here, if that is an 81, then you're going to get 2 nice answers here. Watch this. We can break this apart, the plus or minus, into negative 7 plus 9 over 4, or negative 7 minus 9 over 4. So our two answers would be 2/4, which would be 1/2, or the second answer, -7 minus 9, would be -16/4, or -4. So the formula is a shortcut for solving quadratic equations, especially ones. Now, the beauty about the quadratic formula, okay, I'm going to put the beauty here in a second. I'm going to type it right in here. The beauty of the quadratic formula. It will solve quadratic equations whether they factor or not. That's the beauty. It will solve quadratic equations whether they factor or not. If it does factor, you'll usually get those nice answers like we got in the last example. If it doesn't factor, you can get the ones with radicals in them. All right? So we're going to do a few more examples here with the quadratic formula and show you how it works here. So let's take I'm looking for a good one here in the book. I actually was looking at 8.1 still. I ought to look over here to 8.2, shouldn't I? And I think I see a pretty good one here. What if they start doing this kind of stuff with y'all? I don't know if it's going to make you panic or not, but we will see. What if we get x times x plus 6 equals 2? Now, hopefully you would say, well, I need to distribute that, see? So when I do the x times the x there, I'm going to get x squared plus 6x equals 2. Bring the 2 over, subtract it. So x squared plus 6x minus 2 equals 0. What is your A, B, and C numbers? A, B, C, as easy as do, re, mi. That's the old Michael Jackson song when they were little, the Jackson 5. So that shows my age there a little bit, but that's all right. A is 1, B is 6, C, -2. And you know we're going to take those numbers and plug them in. Yes, let's write the formula. X equals minus B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2A. And it's never a bad idea when students are first learning this to go ahead and put parentheses around each letter. That can save you a lot of suffering, okay? So when all we're doing is we're taking these 3 numbers on the bottom here, plugging it in, it's just like plug and chug now, the Glade commercial. Plug it in, plug it in. So here we go. X equals minus B minus 6 plus or minus the square root of 6 squared minus 4 times A is 1 times C is -2 all over, one nasty big fraction, 2 times A is 1. Continuing to get the 2 answers, x equals -6 plus or minus the square root of 6 squared under the radical is 36 plus 8. You got -4 times 1 times -2 is 8 all over 2. Now, what is this discriminant number? Be careful here. The discriminant number will come out to equal 44, not the square root of 44. If they ask you for the discriminant, remember, you only want the b squared minus 4ac part, and we'll go back and look at that on the handout as well. So you get -6 plus or minus the square root of 44 all over 2. And that's the answers, right? No, Young, no. Because hopefully your spider senses are all tingling and you recognize the square root of 44 simplifies into the square root of 4 times the square root of 11. So you would have to break this into negative 6 plus or minus 2 times the square root of 11 all over 2. But you're still not done, because if you can reduce a fraction, you learned this back in 4th grade, you must always reduce. And let me show you all something. If there is a common number between these three, you must reduce it. All right, now it has to go into all three. The same number has to. All right, so in this case, it would be 2. I hope everyone sees that. So if you knock a 2 out of each one of those, you're going to get in the top negative 3 plus or minus 1 square roots of 11. And they won't put that, but there is your 2 answers. And of course, if you wanted to get those 2 answers on your calculator number-wise, negative 3 plus the square root of 11 would be one value of x, or negative 3 minus the square root of 11. Now for my online students, I think this is how you would enter that in the Math Excel software. Why don't you work it all out? All right, let's go ahead and look at the handout one more time. So let me just pull that up. And we have now talked about, and I'm going to do this in colors, the square root method. Let's asterisk it, okay. Completing the square. The shortcut for completing the square, the quadratic formula. And this discriminant down here, notice the discriminant tells you what types of solutions that you're going to get when you use the formula above it here. And notice the 3 possibilities down here. When the discriminant is greater than 0, or if it comes out positive, you're going to get 2 real solutions. Okay, so you're going to get 2 answers. You know, you might get 1/2 and 5. You might get 3 plus the square root of 11, 3 minus the square root of 11. But you're going to get 2 number answers. When the discriminant is 0, it's the only time you ever get 1 answer when you have the quadratic formula. Now, if you think about it, let me put an answer with the discriminant of 0. Let's say we went through the whole formula and we got 0 as a discriminant over 2. Do y'all see that the plus or minus is useless now? And so when that discriminant is 0, it's the only time you'll ever get 1 answer for the answer. And notice when the discriminant is less than 0, eyes. And that's going to be our last example tonight, is we're going to find out how to use it with complex numbers. Okie dokie here. So let's go ahead and take, for the last example on this virtual chat here, covering a lot of the Chapter 8 topics, 3y squared plus 6y plus 5 equals 0. All right. Now again, this one, look how nice the form is on this one. I thought it would be very nice if we just finished with a nice form. Who knows, I might even work one more here. So A equals 3, B equals 6, C equals 5. Write the formula. In this case, we're going to have to put y equals minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now, you know why I didn't put x equals on this formula? There's no x. It's all y's. And if you want to, you can lock in each letter. Plug it in, plug it in. So y equals minus b, negative 6, plus or minus the square root of 6 squared, minus 4 times a is 3 times c is 5, all over 2 times 3. Keep going. Negative 6 plus or minus the square root of, look what happens here under the radical, 36 minus 4 times 3 is 12 times 5 is 60, all over 6. Now wait a minute, young, 36 minus 60, what's going on here? 36 minus 60 is going to give us a negative value. Are y'all panicking? Don't panic. negative 6 plus or minus the square root of negative 24. I promised you a negative one, didn't I? So I would look for those complex solutions. And that's what, if you know this discriminant number, okay, I'm going to put that somewhere here. The discriminant, discriminant, the discriminant number is negative 24. Not the square root of negative 24, negative 24. Be careful. Break this up into the square root of negative 4 times 6. And then the square root of negative 4 comes out in the next step as 2i times the square root of 6 all over 6. Now, does this fraction reduce? Yes, it does. Why, young? Why does it reduce? Because there is a common number that goes in to all three of these. And if there wasn't, it would be reduced. Okay, now what common number is it? I think everyone sees 2 as a common number. So if we chop a 2 out of each item, we're going to get negative 3 to reduce it, plus or minus 1i times the square root of 6 all over 3. And these are called complex solutions. If you wanted to write them out, negative 3 plus I times the square root of 6 over 3, or negative 3 minus I times the square root of 6 over 3. And that would be the way the book writes it. Now, I don't know if I agree with that way they write it there, but well, that's okay. I think they would be happy with that if you got it. Okay, one more. I can't just leave without one more good example here on the quadratic formula. Fractions, you ask? Fractions? I can hear some of my students, no fractions. 1/3 y squared equals y plus 1/6. Solve the quadratic equation for y. Now, if you don't like fractions, get rid of them, like we did back in the first chapter when we were doing the nice stuff. Multiply through by the LCD of 6, which will clear all of those nasty fractions out. And that's a bad 2 there. So you would get 2y squared equals 6y plus 1. Bring all of this over, get it equal to 0. See, so this one's not going to take as long as some of you thought with fractions. Y'all were going, fractions, no fractions. But you can get rid of them, and life is still good. All right, so A, B, C, as easy as do, re, mi. Here is your ABC numbers in powder blue. A, 2. B, negative 6. C, negative 1. Plug it in, write the formula. The more times you do it, the better you're going to learn it. Most of your college instructors, if not all, are going to want you to know this formula like the back of your hand, like your phone number, like all kinds of good stuff. All right, now plugging in here, y equals minus b. Now, a lot of people could miss this one because it's minus a negative 6 starting out. Be careful here. That's why I wanted to do one more example here. So if y'all lock in those letters, you're less likely to make a sign error. Oh, and those crop up, and you don't know that they're the herder of students' grades. Plus or minus the square root of negative 6, just plugging that in for b again, squared, minus 4 times a is 2 times c is negative 1 all over 2 times 2. So y is going to be 6 plus or minus the square root of 36 plus negative 4 times 2 times negative 1. I get 8 out here, all over 4. So in this case, the discriminant number, we may have seen this discriminant number again, is 44, not the square root of 44. So we have to keep solving here. So we get 6 plus or minus the square root of 44 over 4. We have seen this one that simplifies into the square root of what times what? 4 and 11. What if you don't simplify it? Not good for you. 6 plus or minus 2 times the square root of 11 over 4. And there are 2 answers, right? No. because you see it reduces by what? 2. So I'm going to powder blue it again. 2 goes into that, 2 goes into that, 2 goes into that. You must reduce it. Final 2 answers. Y equals 3 plus or minus the square root of 11. You could put 1 in front of the square root of 11, but they never do. All over 2. All right, so I hope this is good insight for your Chapter 8 to help you out here as we come down the stretch. This is Bob Young signing off from Virtual Chat. Only a few weeks left in the term. Hope everyone has a good rest of the week.